I will be recording to the cloud.
Perfect.
I see the recording button on now.
Okay. I will work on my end to try to get the audio to work.
Were you able to get any of the Finance Committee meeting?
I got the video, but there is no audio. So that is what I'm working on.
Okay. I do believe we have all of the council members present now.
What time is it? It's 7:25, Mike, or what is it?
I've got 7:31.
Oh yeah, 7:31. What's wrong with my watch here? Huh? Okay, well, it's 7:31. I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Common Council for August 18th, 2022 order. And the first item is the roll call. Lori or Mike?
I'll do the roll call. I think Lori's taking the minutes.
Okay.
Olson?
Yes.
Burke?
Present.
Nelson?
Here.
Hune?
Here.
Buzard?
Here.
West?
Present.
Ramsey?
Here.
Sullivan?
Here.
All present and accounted for.
All right. Well, the next item on the agenda is the public comments. It's limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and Mike will keep the time if we need to.
Yes, and the first person up is Lisa Inairo.
Lisa, you're up.
And for Lisa, well, the spelling's right there for Lori. So there you go, Lori. Spelling's right there on her picture.
So Lisa, you are on the Sustainability Committee, right?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. I'm the chair of the Sustainability Committee, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the committee to read a statement that we passed just last night at our meeting regarding our support for Black Lives Matter. And
okay.
The statement is not very long, but it may go a little bit over 3 minutes, so I hope you'll indulge me. And here it is. The Middleton Sustainability Committee works toward a sustainable Middleton for all. Such a community meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. For a community to be sustainable, we must attend to the needs of the environment, the economy, and all people. As a society, we have much work to do to realize that community. Too many tragic events remind us of the work we need to do, especially to meet the racial justice needs of the present for Black people. On May 25th, the video of police officers killing George Floyd, an unarmed Black man, sent shockwaves throughout America. Mr. Floyd was only one of the many unarmed Black people that have been unjustly killed or injured as a result of systemic racism. On February 25th, Ahmaud Arbery, a 25-year-old African-American man simply jogging around his neighborhood, was chased and killed by a white man and his son. It took 74 days for the two men to be arrested. Althea Bernstein, 18, a biracial woman who stopped at a stoplight in downtown Madison on June 24th, was assaulted by 4 white men who approached her car, yelled a racial slur, and then set her on fire. These and other outrages continue to fuel Black Lives Matter protests of the systemic racism and discrimination against Black people that permeate America's past and present. Sometimes the racism and discrimination are easily visible to all, like the murder of Mr. Floyd caught on camera, but most times it isn't, like with inequities in education, employment, criminal justice, incarceration, income, housing, environment, and more. In particular, and all too subtly, Black people suffer disproportionately from the harm our society does to the environment. In a study done by the American Lung Association, African Americans were found to face a higher risk of particle pollution and respiratory disease than whites do, and they are also more vulnerable to COVID-19. Communities of color are far more likely to be housed next to sources of pollution and in low-income neighborhoods. Consequently, this aspect of racial injustice leads to disproportionate disease, disability, and death. We recognize that for our community to be sustainable, we need racial justice in the present and in the future. Accordingly, and in solidarity with the Sustainable Madison Committee, we echo their words and commit to engage this emergent moment in a way that accelerates making our vision for a more equitable and sustainable world a reality. As a committee, we commit to examine all our goals, objectives, and actions through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Following the lead of our mayor and common council, we will structure our work so as to create an inclusive community and ensure racial equity is a core element of the city's operations related to sustainability. As we together address the challenge of sustainability and the need for racial justice that it embraces, we urge a universal attitude of respect. Respect is essential to support the human diversity and the biodiversity our world thrives on. How can we attain a sustainable community if we do not hold in high regard and with due respect both the people we share the world with and the indispensable natural world that supports us all? With such an attitude of respect, we and the Good Neighbor City will help to create a sustainable community with justice for all our neighbors, regardless of race. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Mike, who is next?
Adam Laborde.
Adam, you're up.
Hi, can you guys hear me all right now?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Adam Laborde. My mother and I, Terry, are the co-owners of Scooters Coffee in Middleton. With regards to how the city can help support local businesses who are suffering during the pandemic, I have really a simple request for help, and that's signage. We opened our coffee house at the end of 2019. Never imagined that a few months later, we'd be dealing with the pandemic. This is our first coffee house, the first Scooters location in Wisconsin. So our biggest challenge has always been to get the name out, get the brand out, make sure people know where we're located. And obviously signage is a main component of that. Our location is unique. The property line is roughly 25 feet off away from the sidewalk on the north corner. This is an ideal location for a monument sign. We're trying to be closer to the street to avoid visibility and any future issues with the Sonic property redevelopment next door. We submitted a monument sign plans, including a request to put a sign in a right-of-way so we could be closer to sidewalks like neighboring monument signs. In December, it was approved by the Planning Commission, contingent on approval by the Public Works Committee because there's underground utilities in the right-of-way. We had a survey done, adjusted our plans for the utilities based on our conversation with the city officials. We were under the impression that Public Works would approve the plan, but potentially move the location back if it was too close to the utilities. Unknown to us, the plans were discussed in the March 9th meeting and immediately were rejected because there wasn't a compelling case for the sign in the right-of-way. We were obviously shocked by the decision and how it was done. We were allowed to do a small presentation at the June Public Works meeting, but no members made a motion to revisit the item, so it was quickly denied again. If you visit our location, you can clearly see that there's no visibility issues with the proposed signs. It won't block the line of sight for people entering or leaving our property, and the sign behind the property line won't be as successful or visible. So our request is really simple. We're not asking for any money, even though we spent roughly $2,000 already on this process. We're looking to have a sign placed in a proper location. We're a new business with amazing products, but this pandemic has definitely been challenging, and we need to ensure that our many customers, or as many customers as possible in the short term and long run, or long term, are able to find our coffee house so we can be a success. So basically, please help our business.
Thank you, Adam. Really appreciate that. And the elder Emily Kuhn visited that site, and I did also last week. And so I think I appreciate these comments, Adam, here. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to say any more now. So who is?
Can I make a motion to refer that request for revisit to the appropriate committee?
Absolutely, yes. Okay, so that's your motion. You need a second.
Be helpful to know which committee that is. Was it the Plan Commission that took action?
The Plan Commission, Mike approved it, so it is the Public Works Committee where, or that's where it should go.
Point of order question, is that a thing we can do during public comments?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
This is Olson. I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay,
It's to the motion's to refer to which committee?
Public Works Committee.
Public Works.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion passes and it goes to the Public Works Committee. Who is next? Who would like to speak, Mike?
Kermit Hovey.
Kermit, you're up.
Hello.
Thank you, Adam.
My name's Kermit Hope, and I speak to reiterate and emphasize the importance of realizing racial justice and equity. I speak as a member of the Middleton Sustainability Committee to affirm the importance of the words Lisa just read moments ago from our committee's statement of support for Black Lives Matter. As well, however, I want to emphasize that any expressing intention and aspiration must be accompanied by action. Just as responsibility for sustainability cannot reside in one committee alone, also the opportunity for racial justice and equity cannot reside in this or any of the other thoughtful documents we have produced on this matter here in Middleton. That responsibility and that opportunity lives in and becomes expressed through the thoughts, words, deeds, and decisions of all of us citizens, all of us government representatives, and all of us city staffers. We have declared our work. Let's do all we can to remember to do it together as good neighbors. It's up to all of us to work against racism and for a sustainable world of justice. Thank you.
Kermit, great job. Well said. I appreciate that. Who is next, Mike?
Barry Levinson, I believe, is on the call.
Barry Levinson. Let's hear about the mustard. Well, whatever you like to speak.
Sure. You hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Okay. The pandemic has had a devastating effect on the nonprofit wing of the National Mustard Museum. There was an article last week in Smithsonian Online entitled, "Will America's Roadside Attractions Survive COVID-19?" And the writer interviewed, I think, 5 or 6 different roadside attraction people, and we were the first one. And that's a serious question. Our funding comes primarily from scheduled tours, from donations that visitors drop in the acrylic donation boxes in the museum, and from game and hot dog proceeds on National Mustard Museum. To date, every single tour, every single scheduled tour this year has canceled because of the pandemic. We generally bring in about $1,000 a month in donations at the museum. On a good month now, it's $200. As for National Mustard Day, I think you all know what happened. There was no street festival, which means there were no games, there were no hot dogs to be sold and donated. We tried to keep the ball rolling with a virtual National Mustard Day with a Facebook live stream, but even though a lot of people attended from around the world, it didn't bring in any money. Earlier this year, before the pandemic hit, we printed a book called The Art of Mustard, and it was printed, by the way, here in Middleton. And with more than 600 pictures of unusual and colorful objects in the museum collection, we expected that it would be a great souvenir for visitors to the museum. But of course, the usual summertime rush of visitors has just become a trickle, and the book sales have been, well, disappointing. We continue to attract valuable media attention. Just in the last 10 days, I mentioned the article in Smithsonian. There was also an article in BuzzFeed. There was an article online just yesterday or today in Tablet Magazine. They all reveal how wonderful we are, that we are worth a visit. if only the pandemic weren't here. So it has had a devastating impact on us, as it has on many tourist attractions. So I hope that the city will come up with some ideas on supporting businesses that have been impacted by the coronavirus, the pandemic. We certainly have been hurt. We know that the store part as well has been hurt as well. And I believe Patty Bridges will probably be speaking as well. But thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Barry. I appreciate that. Mike, who is next?
I believe Patty Bridges wanted to speak.
Patty, you're up.
Hi. So I am the owner of the Gourmet Gift Shop at the National Mustard Museum. And my public comments tonight relate to the consideration of the city's support for local businesses suffering from the effects of the pandemic. And I am very interested in the possibility that the city might support local businesses with additional financial resources. I would like those of you present to understand just how devastating the pandemic has been on small businesses. And I guess I can only speak to the effects on my business. The initial 2-month shutdown was a nightmare. Our mail order and curbside sales only amounted to about 10% of our normal sales. Since reopening, we have been able to do about 35 at best of what we were doing the same time last year. People are not traveling. We don't have a lot of visitors, and the number is reflected in the visitors and the amount of our sales. I have to say that the customers that do show up, I believe, are loyal fans and our local supporters. They have been wonderful. The amount of sales we have lost is overwhelming. We will never get those sales back. We have been able to control many of our costs, but our rent stays the same, our utilities stay the same. A lot of our expenses are fixed. We operate on a very small margin, and so without our normal volume, we are losing money every day. Some of the government loans have been life-saving, but they are not the be-all to end-all. It is clear that this pandemic is not going to end anytime soon, and many predictions are dismal for the coming fall. If the city can find a way to help, I know many small businesses that could use the help to stay in business, including the National Mustard Museum. So I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, I appreciate that. Who's next, Mike?
I don't show anybody else with their hand up, so if anybody else wants to speak, please speak up now.
Anybody else who might want to speak at this time? Anyone else who might want to speak at this time? Okay, I'm going to close that part of the meeting, and we move on to the approval of consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda, Ramsey.
So motion by Elder Dan Ramsey. I need a second.
Second, Susan.
Second by Elder Susan West. Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Now we want to move on to one of the very important items. This is the proclamation honoring and celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage in the United States. The Middleton Common Council is so fortunate that we have 4 elders who are women and 4 elders who are men, 50-50, which is amazing. So I'm going to start the proclamation, and then Elder District 1, 3, 4, and 6 will read parts of the proclamation as we go along. So proclamation is honoring and celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage in the United States. All right, so the first one is Kathy Olson. Kathy?
Kathy's muted.
I'm sorry. Whereas June 10th, 2019 marked the 100th anniversary of Wisconsin leading the nation as the first state to ratify the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, granting women the right to vote. And whereas women fought for the right to vote for at least 72 years before it was granted and persevered in the face of resistance. And whereas the nation's national constitutional amendment for women's suffrage passed overwhelmingly in the Wisconsin Assembly, 54-2, and in the Wisconsin Senate, 25-1.
Thank you, Kathy. Next one is Katie Nelson.
And whereas to be the first state, Wisconsin raced with Illinois and Michigan, hand delivering the certification moments before the Illinois messenger arrived. And whereas the necessary 33 states soon ratified the 19th Amendment, and half of the United States population was enfranchised on August 26, 1920. And whereas the fight for women's suffrage from the first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York, to enfranchisement lasted 72 years, with women from all walks of life, political views, and demographic backgrounds asking for the right to voice their opinions at the polls.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. And the next one is Elder Emily Kuhn.
Whereas Wisconsin women by the thousands advocated for the right to vote on the streets, in the newspapers, and in the state and federal capitals. And whereas Wisconsin-born Carrie Chapman Catt led the national movement, meeting with President Woodrow Wilson to secure his support for suffrage in light of women's contributions during World War I. And whereas Wisconsin women, like former First Lady Belle Case La Follette and Reverend Olympia Brown, garnered national attention for their suffrage efforts. And
thank you, Emily. And the next one is Elder Susan West.
Whereas it took male allies to support women in their endeavor to vote, for it was sons, husbands, and fathers who ultimately heard the calls of women and took the historic Wisconsin vote on June 10th, 1919. And whereas women are running for office in unprecedented numbers, and many current politicians, both male and female, remember that they follow in the footsteps of these great suffragists. And whereas the Wisconsin Women's Suffrage Association was empowered by the slogan, "Women's suffrage yesterday, today, and forever." And Wisconsin still embodies this principle today.
Thank you, Susan. Now, therefore, as mayor of the city of Middleton, together with the Middleton Common Council, city staff, and volunteer committee members, I proclaim, honor, and celebrate 100 years of women's suffrage in the U.S. on August 26, 2020. May all Middleton voters always cherish and exercise the right to vote. This proclamation was adopted at a regular meeting of the Middleton Common Council on 18th day of August 2020. This was actually the day 100 years ago when the Tennessee, the last state to ratify this women's suffrage right to vote. Okay, I need a motion to approve, and maybe all the women elders can make a motion.
I'll help with that motion. Yes, so moved.
Okay, that's the motion by all the women elders, and all the men elders can second.
Second.
All right. So all those in favor of the motion say
Gurjeet,
aye.
before we vote, I would like to read some comments from one of my constituents, Lisa Hanero.
Absolutely.
She's a member of the League of Women Voters and wanted us to also be aware that although the 19th Amendment was a milestone in women's equality, it did not immediately guarantee the right to vote to all women. Japanese, Asian Indian, Chinese American, Filipino, and Native American women were not eligible to become naturalized and therefore could not vote in 1920. Black women faced discrimination and racism at the polls until the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The right to vote did not come easy for the majority of people who now make up the citizenry of the United States. To this day, we must remain vigilant against barriers that disenfranchise citizens from their basic constitutional right to vote based on their socioeconomic status, notably people of color, students, and people with disabilities. All eligible voters should be able to cast a ballot confidently, proudly, and without additional requirement that create barriers to voting. The League of Women Voters is requesting that the occasion be honored and recognized by the ringing of bells throughout the Middleton community at noon on August 26th by citizens, churches, schools, and businesses as they were in communities throughout Wisconsin 100 years ago in celebration of women's enfranchisement. This activity will coincide with the 19th Amendment commemorative event being planned by the Wisconsin Governor's 19th Amendment Centennial Committee, chaired by First Lady Kathy Evers at noon on August 26th in Madison at the state capitol.
Susan, do you know if they'll turn off the tornado sirens at noon next Wednesday during that
I
time?
don't know, but, oh, not next Wednesday. Do they do it every week or just the first Wednesday of
They
the
do
month?
it, I thought they did it every Wednesday at noon.
First
I
Wednesday.
think it's just
Is
the
it
first
first Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Okay,
First Wednesday.
good, good,
I think we're safe unless it's a real tornado, Mike.
good, good. Thank you. Just wanted to be sure.
Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you, Lisa. As you can tell, the success does not come easy. It took 72 years. And I watched actually the documentary and learned a lot more about it. It was quite a movement. Okay, so the motion is to approve the proclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone. Okay, we are on to the agreements now. So the item number 1 is the stormwater management systems maintenance agreement with Demingway LLC. It's a PPD parking lot expansion, PC item 2593. So it's a close to the airport. Need a motion to approve.
Ramsey moves to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Elder Dan Ramsey and second by Elder Luke Foussard. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the stormwater management system maintenance agreement with Demingway LLC, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Item number 2, agreement with MSA Professional Services for design services related to Firefighters Memorial Park. Need a motion to approve.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance for a price not to exceed $26,300.
Need a second.
This is Robert. I'll second.
Motion by Elder Sullivan, second by Elder Burke. Any questions or comments now? Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the agreement with MSA Professional Services for design service related to firefighters Memorial Park, not to exceed $26,300, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. So item number 3, agreement with Core Incorporated for real estate services for Pleasant View Road reconstruction.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance.
I will second that.
Oh, go ahead, Luke.
Okay, so the motion by Elder Sullivan and second by Elder Fuzard. Any questions or comments? I looked at their proposal and it was excellent. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to approve the agreement with Core Incorporated for real estate services for Pleasant View Road construction, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4, and this is a big one. Agreement with Wisconsin Department of Transportation for state-led surface transportation program, urban project for the reconstruction of Pleasant View Road.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance, subject to final city attorney approval.
I'll second that. This is Kuhn.
Okay, so the motion has been made and it's seconded. And any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? All those in
Mayor?
favor? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just was going to ask somebody to mute their keyboard. And also for Lori to scroll down on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So all those in favor of the motion to approve the agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the urban project for reconstruction of Pleasant View Road, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to the item number 5. Agreement with Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corporation for a payment in lieu of taxes. This is 6818 University Avenue, and it used to be called the Eddy.
I'll move approval as recommended by finance.
I'll second it. This is Robert.
Okay, so the motion by Elder Sullivan, second by Elder Burke. Any questions or comments?
Lori, could you scroll the page down on the council agenda?
Yeah,
Can you
actually
hear
don't
me?
see it.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, it's blank, so Bill's gonna pull his up. I don't know why my packet's not showing any pages.
Okay.
It's weird.
Lori, can you stop sharing so I can switch mine up?
Yep. So Bill's gonna grab it. Sorry about that.
While they're working on that, can I just have a 1-minute synopsis on this?
Absolutely.
I want to make sure I understand the in lieu of taxes. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Well, could you give a, well, Abby, you want to give a synopsis, or Bill, or whoever?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Nothing is changing with this property. So the Addy will look and function exactly like what was planned and approved by the city.
Okay.
The only change here is that a nonprofit developer is purchasing it. And they're the Wisconsin Historic Preservation the Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corporation. And because they meet the requirements, and this will be a workforce housing development, 80% of the units are going to be affordable at 80% or less than AMI. They are able to, under state statute, claim a tax exemption for this property. And so they're in the process of applying for that exemption through our city assessor. This corporation owns over 8,000 units of housing in the state, so they're pretty familiar with the process to apply for the tax exemption, and they're pretty confident that they're going to meet all of the requirements. And so what the pilot does is it enables the city to get $15,000 payment in lieu of taxes. $15,000 is not quite the amount of what would be the city portion of the tax bill if this were a taxable project. We would estimate that would be about $25,000 beginning next year. But it will enable the project to get restarted because construction is stalled right now on the property. And so it would enable that, and it would also give us the benefit of having some long-term income restricted and affordable housing at this site.
Any question to Abby or any other questions? Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion by Elder Sullivan, second by Elder Burke, that is the agreement with Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corporation, formerly called the EDDI, for a payment in lieu of taxes, which is 6818 University Avenue. Say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to licenses, and I think this will be deferred. Renewal of application for the combination of Class B beer and Class B liquor license by Willow Sports Bar and Smokehouse LLC, doing business at Willow 3112 Parmenter Street. Taylor Stussy, Monona, Wisconsin agents. So Kathy, you want to make a motion?
I'd like to remove this from the agenda and refer it back to LNO. We have a special LNO meeting scheduled for the 25th, and I'd like to take this back up at that meeting.
Need a second.
This is Robert. I'll second that motion.
Okay, any questions or comments? Motion by Elder Olson and second by Elder Burke to take this item off the agenda and send it back to LNO. Any further question or comments? All those in favor of this motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to miscellaneous. Item number 1, update on route to recovery grant submission and planned allocation of grant funds. What is, Bill, what are we supposed to do with this?
Just listen.
Yeah, there's no action required on this item. We just wanted to provide this as an update. We did this for the Finance Committee and also for the Council for those that weren't at the Finance Committee. The city's allocation under the Route to Recovery grant, which is the State of Wisconsin CARES funds being provided to municipalities, our total allocation is $336,742. And the first submission that was due in July, we submitted $54,210 of costs. All of those items have been accepted, and they're shown in the left column here in the submitted 7/15/20. That includes items for emergency operation activities, mostly signage and some items at the Aquatic Center, personal protective equipment, various cleaning and sanitizing services, and telework expenses. In this plan, we've put together an allocation of how we would plan to use the remaining funds that we have earmarked for us. And you can see the items in the next 2 columns, incurred but not submitted and additional planned. We would be planning to submit for those additional items in the September and the November submissions. And we really just want to provide this, both provide an update as well if there's any feedback or direction from any of the elected officials, please notify us of that. We'll continue to update our actual costs and provide another update as we get closer to our final submission date. One item that I noted for the Finance Committee is that we do believe that we have the ability to claim some public safety payroll expenses. And that is shown in the highlighted line here that we're anticipating about 120,000 in those costs. That's based on some language in the guidelines that allow for public safety expenses if we can demonstrate that staff time was used for other purposes specifically related to COVID-19 response, and that staff time was allocated for different purposes than the way they were originally budgeted. Much of the additional costs that we have coming up are in the cleaning, sanitizing, and mitigation area for some of the additional enhanced cleaning taking place at city facilities. And then we also have some additional telework expenses that are planned both for continued Zoom meeting licenses as well as laptop docking stations to provide devices for key city staff for doing remote work. Again, just informational, but I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Bill, I have a question.
Yes, Susan.
I know that Lori had to do some extra things for holding the April election. Could those expenses be included here? And then any additional expenses for the August and November elections?
Yeah, election-related expenses can be submitted for the Route to Recovery program. We also have about $20,000 in funding coming through a CARES allocation from the Wisconsin Election Commission. And Lori and I are coordinating to identify which expenses we're going to submit under this program and which will be submitted through the Wisconsin Election Commission, because we can't count them in both places. But between the two, we will be able to include a lot of our additional postage, cleaning, sanitizing, and those types of expenses for the election.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, Susan. Any other questions?
Hey,
Any other
Bill,
questions?
just an ask here. Could you have Lori brief Finance Committee on what the status of election organizing will be, more for the general than anything else? I'd just like to understand how things are going and what risks we have. So if you could, I'll just make a referral that Lori brief the Finance Committee on that topic.
Okay.
And Bill, this is
Thank
Robert.
you, Mark.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. I just want to confirm that the total route to recovery allocation is 336,742. That's pretty much non-negotiable, right? So if we find other charges, that's helpful because we want to make sure that we at least reach that limit. But if we find an extra $100,000 that would fall within the guidelines, we're still not going to get more than this total. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is our maximum. Municipalities that don't use their full allocation can allocate it to another. So unless we find another municipality with unspent funds that wants to give us authority, this is our maximum that we're entitled to.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Could we clarify, was it a motion to refer that you were making, Mark, or was it just a request to have Lori make the presentation at Finance Committee?
Whichever is more effective.
All right. As long as Bill's got it, we're good.
I have another question on these COVID-19 related
this was
expenses.
just for the information, so we don't.
I have another question. Does what we had to do for this opening the swimming pool count,
There are items related to the aquatic center that would be eligible, and we do have some costs that were submitted. Generally, some of the staff costs that were involved would not be eligible, but for some of the items for if there would be equipment purchases or additional cleaning and sanitizing costs, that those would be eligible.
Okay, so we could easily have more than the 336,000.
With the inclusion of the item for the public safety payroll expenses, yes, I don't think we'll have any problem meeting that target.
I'm
we did not
wondering if
include the
we might
public
go
safety-
over.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
I was wondering if we would actually go over the 336,000.
Yeah, there was some discussion at the Finance Committee that if it looks like we have other costs outside of the public safety payroll expenses, that we could claim those other more specific costs first and then adjust that public safety line item if we need to.
Any other questions? Okay, then we move on to the next item. This is the concession dynamic. So
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Mr. Mayor. Can you repeat
Yeah, okay,
that?
good. I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
Me too.
Thanks, everyone.
well, can you hear me now?
Yes. Keep going.
Okay, so we are on to the item number 2, consideration of city support for local businesses suffering from the effects of pandemic. So who is going to take it? Mike?
Yes,
Bill?
I'd be happy to
or
take that, Mayor. Can you hear me? I'd be happy to take that.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So I won't repeat what's written and on your screen, but I will tell you that the evidence from other cities with which we're familiar is showing that loans have not been readily received by businesses at this time from local governments. Sun Prairie has had one successful loan and Fitchburg 2. Verona has taken a different approach with the cash grant program, and they have administered about 55 to 60 cash grants between $1,000 and $4,000. And I'll just say that, you know, my wife Julianne works with the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, and from their experience around the state as well, they're finding that businesses are cash strapped, laden with debt, and as described earlier by Barry Levinson and Patty Bridges, and from other businesses that I've talked with as well, with the federal stalemate and no sign of additional support coming from the federal government, it could be a very long, hard fall. And, you know, there's a lot of businesses that just will not make it without additional support moving forward. So many city governments have considered what they could do. Some have chosen loan programs. Some, like Verona, have chosen cash grants. There are good arguments to be made either way about whether or not this is a legitimate local government function. But given the alternative that we're looking at with a number of businesses going under, my concern all along has been to try to support as much as possible, whether financially or other things like the CDA is doing currently with the downtown area, ways in which we can help the morale and the support for our local businesses. So Bill has done a little background research into financial mechanisms, because one of the difficult issues is that even though we could use tax increment financing, we can't use it outside of the TIDs, the tax increment districts. And believe me, I tried to get Larry Beckler and Matt Fleming to come to my viewpoint, but they wouldn't budge. So Bill has found from the state trust fund loan program that it would be an eligible activity.
Mike, can I interrupt you here for just a minute? The issue is not funding at this point. The issue is whether or not to create some type of program. I think that the purview for the source of funds belongs to finance, and the issue before us here is whether the council supports some type of either a grant or a loan program. I think it's premature to get into sources of funds, and we ought to leave that up to finance if something is agreed upon.
Well, with due respect, Mark, the council is the fiscal body of the city, and I'm just pointing out that we are aware of a mechanism other than TIF that could be used. Now, it is certainly the council can provide direction and ask the finance committee for its recommendation. I think that's an important thing, and they should do that. But I just wanted them to be aware, the full council to be aware that that is an option.
Yeah, that's okay, Mike. Yeah, that's all right.
Mike, I think the other questions that have come up repeatedly as we've talked about this issue in the past is administration, right? And specifically who would be in charge of the review of applications, and then the processing of the money, et cetera. So do you want to speak at all to that and kind of the research that you've seen in what other communities do?
Well, if we were to go with a loan program, I think a way to go would be with one of the prospective partners that I mentioned in the staff comments. That could include a bank, local bank, as well as MADC, Middleton Area Development Corporation, Madison Development Corporation, or WIBIC, Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative. We could also do that same mechanism with any one of those entities as well. I think Verona has done it with staff. Bill might know more about it than I do, but I believe it's primarily staff reviewing the cash grant applications. But it certainly would make sense to look at an entity like that to partner with us either way, in my opinion.
Mike, would there be cost associated with such a partnership?
It's not unusual for those organizations to charge a fee. I haven't spoken with any of them specifically about this. I know, for example, that I think Dayton Buy Local is not charging anything for the county administration of the cash grant program, and they too would be another option.
I think they are, Mike, actually. I think they are charging.
Oh, they're not. They are. Okay.
Yep. For effort incurred. So it's reimbursing for expenses, and then they're charging for time and kind of effort, at least according to what my dad said.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Luke. I know WIBIC does charge a fee for their service.
So on the loan program, I guess I knew it was premature, but I wanted to see what the possibilities were. And I talked to one of the banks, and so it is. This is what San Prairie and Fitchburg has done, that the banks directly running the program. And I think Mike and I talked about too that which banks may be the potential we should talk to. I talked to just one, and I think there's an interest depending upon what we want to do. but that was very premature, and I didn't want to go into details until we had some sort of approval from the city council and then finance committee as well. But on go the loan route, we do have the banks which can help do it.
This is Kathy. I just wanted to say, back when we first discussed this in May, we didn't know what kind of money would be coming from the federal governments or how long this would be lasting. And I think we see right now that this is going to be a long, protracted event, and we really need to help these businesses get through this somehow.
And
Well said.
to the council, to the point what the council was on May 5th when it was discussed, we were also very concerned about keeping the pool open for the summer. We didn't know the full impact of PPP loans. We do know now that August 8th was the closing of the second round of PPP loans, which have really kept a lot of businesses afloat. We also know that many of our local businesses, I helped 30 of them with WDC grants of up to $2,500. And at least a few of them acknowledge that they've received those. And the county assistance is now, has been completely doled out. So it's no longer available. It's just a lot of sources drying up with Congress in recess. It remains to be seen if there will be additional stimulus from the federal government.
So Bill or Mike, I think our own budget is pretty tight, and I wish we had some federal money or state money. You already put in this memo here, or county money. So that would be great help, and we could somehow help provide that to the businesses with our own budget and very tight. I don't know where the money would come from. I don't know if Bill has anything to add or say. We need some source of funds. If we had the source of funds, I guess then we can talk about other things. So
let me just step in, Gurdeep. There were some discussions last week, some email chains about what an appropriate source of funds might be, but that was dependent upon the type of program that had interest. I think from a loan perspective, finance could relatively easily determine an appropriate source of funding.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more problematic that the city do a grant program because essentially what that becomes is a tax rebate. And it seems a bit discriminatory to offer it to businesses when it doesn't offer it to private citizens, right? I'm sure that we could find thousands of homeowners here that are having the same struggles paying their bills. And if you provide a grant to a business, we could probably be on the hook for providing grants to property owners, all property owners. So in that respect, I think we should not consider grants at all and steer whatever we're talking about into some type of loan program.
Mark, what I was with the tax incremental districts, it wouldn't cover the whole city, but we've put a lot of time and effort into these districts, and to see them go down the tubes because of the pandemic would be a shame. These businesses took a chance on us moving into these districts when they're brand new, and they increased the base of the city. And I think it's so important that we help them through this.
I'm not suggesting we don't. What I'm suggesting is that a grant program would probably be inappropriate considering the needs of all of our city residents.
Correct, you're saying that, but these businesses took the chance and went into these TID districts And we put so much effort into building them up. I just don't want to have a backslide with a bunch of vacancies and a bunch of businesses going out. And I think that we have a way we can help some of them within the TID districts. And if it's loans or whatever we have to do, I just think that it's important that we support the businesses through this.
So has anybody?
Yeah, Kathy had a great. Elder Ramsey, go ahead.
Has anybody?
Okay.
You know, as we talk about whether it's a grant or a loan, what kind of amount would actually make a difference? I mean,
Yeah,
you know, if you're giving somebody, if you're giving somebody, say $1,000, that's, you know, while I'm sure that's helpful to pay a bill, it's not going to keep you in business.
No.
So I guess I'm struggling to try to figure out what we do that would actually be helpful. Not.
I hear that.
That's true.
Totally, Dan. I think that's a great point. I think there's hopefully, I think part of this is to serve as a bit of a bridge between, you know, if and when the you know, more CARES Act type money becomes available.
This is Emily.
There are great points. Okay, Emily, go ahead.
This is
Emily.
When you're talking about how much money would be helpful, I just want to share that I was talking to the manager at one of our restaurants in my district, and, you know, picking up my food to go, standing there waiting for 2 minutes, and I asked how he was doing, and he said he just has to make rent. If he can get enough calls in, you know, enough orders to keep going, if he can just make rent for each month, he's going to stay in business. So I'm sharing that because having that conversation, because my husband and I have had small businesses for the last decade, and you know, there's side businesses, and then his was a main business for 8 years, and I would help him with the paperwork and the taxes and everything. And so the reason I'm sharing is that, you know, there's been a lot of changes over the last 5 years, and it was pushing us to the brink even back in you know, October, November, because of all the tax changes recently. So adding on the pandemic was not expected for my husband's business. And then, but basically, a lot of times you're barely making it. But what this restaurant owner was saying was he just wants to get enough orders to keep paying rent. And so these amounts would probably be small for most of our businesses. But really, if we do a bifurcated effort, if you do like a loan program option, and an effort to remind residents, you know, if people like me who are teleworking, go get lunch twice a week, you know, or pick up dinner, or go get a bike. You know, there's a bike shop in my district. Y'all have different, you know, small businesses, whatever that is. Like, but what I think would have been more helpful as a small business person, if my husband was still in the small business world, is have someone ask the business, what do you need? You know, the city has a great website. We need to get that information out there. Restaurants probably have a different need than, say, the bike shop in my district, or I don't know, other businesses that people have. And, you know, I'm thinking of like the mall, the Greenway Station Mall. Their needs are totally different than, say, what my district needs, which is some coffee shops and, you know, near Lakeview Park, great places. So I would take a bifurcated effort, and I would also consider like sending information to businesses, because in talking to that restaurant owner, I realized he doesn't have time to go to a city website. He doesn't have time to research what's available. He's literally trying to get orders through the door, and he's probably cutting staff to the skeleton crew. So kind of think about it on a few levels and keep it simple.
Emily, I hear you, but most of what I think you're referring
Thank you,
to
Emily.
is retail. I'm sorry, this is Katie. Sorry. A lot of us who are appointment based are not taking new people because of COVID, and our current clientele are already cut in half. And so every business is a little different, and I totally get that the communication part is the key. And restaurants definitely need everyone to, do more takeout. But it's so different for each business.
Thanks, Katie.
Sorry, your
Anyone
ideas are
else?
awesome. It's different.
Makes sense. It totally makes sense.
Mike,
Anyone else?
I have a question for Mike about when he spoke with Sun Prairie and Fitchburg. Did you get a general sense of why the loan programs haven't been highly used?
They don't want more debt.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't me, but I agree with that. Was that Dan?
Yeah, they don't want any more debt.
Yeah, that's the primary reason from what I've heard from those communities and from, again, my wife, Julianne, who works in this field, is that they're already saturated with debt, and taking more on is, it's just not the Wisconsin ethic, I think.
So my concern is if we were to go down the loan path, it may be a lot of work for nothing, right?
That's my gut feeling about it, Luke. I just don't think, and Katie's a business owner, Emily's husband, and ask yourselves, would you take another loan out at this point?
No.
Not to put you on the spot, but just to give the rest of us an idea what that is like right now.
So this is Katie, and I got some help from the disaster loan from the Small Business Administration, and it's a deferred loan. I don't owe any payments until next May, but I got a note in the mail in July that had a payment coupon on it, and it said, you don't owe anything yet, but you should know you are acquiring interest every day. And so the loan I got is going to be much bigger than when I pay it. Like, I think that was a real surprise to a lot of us to hear that it was starting to accrue interest right off the bat. And they're going to let themselves collect some interest on the bottom line before they're asking for our payments. And so I don't want to take on any more debt.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think it's important to note is we see the money coming from different sources, the county and the state, and even private not-for-profits. However, almost all of it is coming from the federal government. And the state and the county are pass-through entities that have gotten those federal funds. So one major difference is that our funds would be coming from a local source and not from the federal government. That's an important distinction to make.
Yeah, and let's add on to that, okay? So the source of those funds is our tax base, right? So what we're doing here, and I'm not saying I'm not trying to make I'm not advocating for either position, but the source of funds is coming from our tax base. And as such, what happens here is that we're asking to support the few at the expense of many, right? It's a policy decision that we're going to tax every resident, every property owner in Middleton to bail out a few business owners. I'm not saying that to be pejorative, but just everybody has to understand that that's what the effect of this is going to be. And depending on how we structure this, right, we don't have a whole lot of room under our levy limits to do much in terms of juggling money around.
Mark,
that's
could
why.
I
Go ahead.
add on there?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it would be all of our taxpayers.
Let him finish, please.
But we have to keep in mind, we have at least 40% of our residents live in rental properties. And no, they don't directly pay city property taxes, but the city property taxes that their landlords are paying get transferred over to them in terms of higher rent. And many of those are lower income people that could not take on extra cost.
Mark, I
Excellent
have,
point, Susan.
I have a question. When you were saying that the cost of this would go to all the taxpayers for a few, were you talking about if it was a grant, or were you talking about it if it was a loan, or both? Because I would have thought the loan would be like a collaborative partnership with the bank, or do we accrue some of that cost?
Well, I think it depends on the source of the funds, right? The money costs money. So
right.
if, for example, we had to borrow money to be able to lend money, we would have that arbitrage amount that we would have to somehow make up. I'm not suggesting that it's good or bad. It's just a fact that in order for the city to lend money, it has to borrow money to do that. So it's not a gift. I mean, it's not without cost to be able to provide some type of program here. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't do it, but you have to understand that there are downsides to both of these mechanisms. And the question is, where does the council lie in terms of supporting the businesses? I think, if in my opinion, if we are going to do this, we can make it such that that we offer some type of low interest or no interest loan, or with or without some type of deferred terms, would be preferential than giving out grants. Right.
I think most people will agree with you, Mark. Well, any other comments? I have few comments, but I will wait until everybody else has to. Anyone else who has question or comments?
I don't know if I have a quick thing I don't know if no one takes advantage of the no interest loan, then it wouldn't be preferential, right? I mean, it'd be preferential for the city to do the no interest loan versus a grant. But if no one takes us up on the offer, then ultimately we will have spent a lot of time and effort on something that didn't actually accomplish really hardly anything.
Robert has his hand up.
Robert?
Thank you. I guess not to add one more thing to think about, but I think we need to is there are also ways to help businesses that don't necessarily cost the city money. And we had one example tonight. This isn't a panacea that helps everybody, but I'm on Public Works. Scooter's Coffee Shop asked us to do something. We in Public Works didn't take it up at that time. And then today, the Common Council said, go back and look at that again. And there may be ways for individual businesses to contact us saying, this is my need. Now, if their need is give me $1 million, that will be a very short conversation. But if their need is hey, can you close down a street, allow me to put up picnic tables or chairs in an area to encourage more people to come to my business during the day when it's sunny out, you know, there's some things that we could do there to probably help some of those businesses as well. And that really is not something that we can just say, here's a program that we will do this for everyone, because it really requires businesses to tell us, what do you need? What non-financial help can we supply as a city? And I would definitely encourage individual companies to make those requests if they see a need. Because I think there's a lot more chance that we can do something than if we're having to borrow a few $1,000,000 with possibility of getting it back at some future date, or maybe not. So I guess that's one more thing that needs to be considered is, are there ways that the city can remove obstacles or do things for businesses in the short term that will aid their ability to increase their own business? And I know that that's not something that tonight we will make a decision on what we can do, but I would certainly suggest that it be something that we ask our business owners to come to us, as we had tonight with Scooter's Coffee Shop, saying, this would really help us. If you could do this, that would be the thing that we are asking for. So that's all I have to say. It's just one more thing that maybe, you know, that we can, one more option for helping people. Thank you.
That is actually an excellent
Susan West
point,
has her hand up.
Robert. And we have a community. Who is it? Who has your hand up, Mike?
Susan has her hand up, and then Kathy after her.
Yeah, Robert, I like your idea of asking businesses what help they need. I've got to admit, I've got concerns about the city. I mean, we've got incredibly tight finances, and without going to a referendum to raise our levy limit, yes, I know we can borrow money without having to go to referendum, but I don't want us to get in a situation where we might have to actually cut some services to fund some of this. The other thing, but I like the idea of asking businesses what they need. So I was wondering, Mike, if some of this couldn't be sent out on a Polco survey to our businesses, or with the chamber sending out information, or to get feedback from people. Finding out.
Susan, in the list that Bill had presented earlier, we have surveys that Polka is doing for us. One of those is a resident survey, and the other is a business survey. So I think we will find quite a bit of information from that survey. It's a national model that they're doing, and I think we'll get a flavor for what the business needs are, and the depth of concerns as well. But I don't know that it will get to all of the issues you're talking about here. I think from what I've seen, primarily the issue is money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's always a big issue, Mike. So, Susan, are you done? Then Kathy, after Susan.
Well, I'd like to say one thing in terms of federal money that comes out. I know I got a request from one of my constituents who has a very small, it's a two-person business dealing with website design, wanting to know what banks would actually sign his application for the payroll protection plan, because UW Credit Union wouldn't do it, and that's where his account was. So just some of this information on how to even work some of the federal things would be helpful.
Excellent point, Susan. Kathy, you're up.
I just wanted to say during public comment, we did hear from a couple businesses, a Mustard Museum and the store, And both of them were loud and clear saying that it's funds that they need right now. And the second thing, Mike, do you know what the terms were for Sun Prairie and Fitchburg's loan program? Or is there a way we can sweeten it enough to make it, on the council here, we have a couple people that are in businesses. Is there's loan terms that would make it favorable for you to take out to secure loans then?
I believe they are charging interest. I don't recall how much. Luke, I know you looked into several communities around the state. What did you find?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm looking at some prairies right now. So maximum loan amount up to 5,000. Interest rate is fixed rate at prime at time of approval. Payment period begins 90 to 180 days after the loan approval. Monthly payments for 1 or 2 years after an initial grace period. Loan agreements will include specific clawback provisions that could be enforced upon a missed payment. There will be no penalty for early repayment. Final terms shall be set by the Oversight Committee of Sun Prairie.
Could you say the interest rate again?
Yeah,
It's prime.
Fixed at prime.
What's prime right now?
That's probably
like 0.
0.5.
No, the prime is different than the Fed rate. I think it may be 3%, 3 or 4% prime.
Oh yeah, he's right. Actually, it's the prime rate right now is 3.25.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what my disaster loan interest is.
So that is where we possibly could do something.
Well, if we could make it.
Okay, any further questions? Yes, Kathy.
Is there a rate what's the lowest rate we could charge that would entice businesses to participate in a loan program? And how far can we defer a payment, or how long can we, because the recovery from this is going to be a long time for people to get back on their feet and start being profitable.
Yeah, and the ugly truth of it is that right now we have warm weather. So the restaurants downtown are able to have folks out on the sidewalks and at the plaza, but you know, soon it's going to start to get a little bit colder, and if this hasn't changed, you know, even that's going to drop.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're talking about a loan program, I think we need to take a look at, if that's something we're interested in, we need to take a look at what kind of package we could put together, what kind of interest, like Kathy was speaking, would we have to charge? I mean, I think we need some more details to be able to have a good answer of how we're going to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Kate with the Fitchburg Chamber. Is it okay if I comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
Hi, thank you. So I think just the feedback that we've had with our businesses over the last several months is, you know, even the email communication and that type of thing that we're sending around to them, they don't have time to even look at. All they're trying to do is, I mean, they've had to completely change their business model. A lot of these businesses have very few employees. And so they don't necessarily, and I heard earlier, you know, we cannot take on any more debt. That is something that we're hearing. They don't have time to sit down and even think about what they need, because all they're doing is surviving. So, you know, I think that a program is needed, and I think that the program needs to be simple, and I don't think that the program can be something that is just sent out and we hope that they respond. I think that's the problem in the other communities. I think there has to be phone calls and visits and letting them know, hey, this is available and here's what we're willing to do for you. Because the programs that have been presented, whether it's county, community, state, or federal, they wouldn't have even picked up on if we would not have picked up the phone and called them and told them about it.
And by the way, that's Kate Wicker. I'm not sure if you got her full name.
Kate,
And
is
she's
that
the
something which
director
you
of the
could
Middle.
help the city with?
That was Kate Wicker. She's the director of the Middleton Chamber of Commerce. I think she reverted to saying Fitchburg at one point.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm so
that's where she was, and that's okay.
All right,
So,
just want to make sure you all knew she's Middleton.
You help us out with
I was so impressed that somebody
that's
from
program I went
Pittsburgh
to.
was at our meeting.
Information.
Kate, I was.
Sorry for calling you out, Kate.
Thank
Well,
you
that's
for doing
funny.
that.
So,
I am passionate about small business no matter where it's at.
that's good.
Good
So-
answer. Like that
so-
answer.
So could you help us collect some of the information by going around and see what would be, and we are really talking about loans here, that what would be acceptable to businesses? So any other questions or comments?
Well, I mean, the alders can help with that too, right? Any businesses we have in our
Sure.
districts, we can
But
contact and ask them what they need, and we can at least,
yeah, make a
Um,
personal connection. Yes. Mhm.
yeah.
I'm in, Katie. I like that idea. I know a lot of mine. It'll give me a chance to meet a couple more. And if they're surviving, like the Chamber of Commerce is saying, then
Okay.
that might help. So whatever I can do, I'm all in.
I mean, they might have totally different ideas than what we're batting around of
Good
what
idea.
they need. And so then we can come back and talk about it again. What do you guys think?
Good idea.
You want to
So-
defer to the next meeting?
In summary, it looks like there's a lot more work which needs to be done here. And there are a lot of ideas. Mike, you think you got enough information here to go back and work on it?
Well, yes. I think it would be helpful if what I've deduced from the discussion is that the council wants to help. It appears that there's more of a consensus on a very low interest loan as opposed to cash grant. And if I've got that wrong, please let me know.
No, that's absolutely right.
I don't think there's a
I'm a-
consensus on that, no.
I don't think so either. I mean, just what Kate just said, you know, the businesses are so busy. They're just trying to tread water right now and to try to come up with some inventive ways. I mean, I think that they need some financial support, and I can see it in various ways. I'm not opposed to grants if we can swing it.
So Kathy, as you know,
You're cutting out,
at least
Gurdeep.
the
I can't
downtown
hear you.
area businesses in a very big way.
Gurdeep,
We
you're
have
cutting
been
out.
helping the downtown. Okay, well, I guess, okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Robert
through
has
CDA,
his hand up, by the way.
through CDA, we have been helping the businesses, and you know, we could do more. Robert?
Yes. So it sounds like there's still some debate on loans versus grants. I guess one way to kind of split the difference, and I'll just throw it out there, is if the idea is to try to financially help businesses, would the Common Council be interested in like a 0% interest loan for a certain amount of time? And this might be 1 full year or something. It basically says we're the ones, the Common Council and the city are paying the interest rate, because we would almost definitely have to borrow the money ourselves. We offer money. There would have to be a cap on this, but somebody takes out $5,000, let's say, and they get that money and they just hold on to it for a year, year and a half, whatever this number is, it's still a loan. The idea is that we get paid back at least our principal, and sometimes we wouldn't. There might be some companies that go under and we're not going to be able to collect on that loan. But that would be a loan that is about as close to getting a grant to somebody as I can think of without offering a grant.
That's a great point, Robert.
This is
Yeah.
Emily. Could we maybe?
Yes, Emily.
Is there enough understanding of grants versus loans to vote on one way or the other, just to get a sense of where council is? Like, if it's 4-4, then like we could explore other options. But if it's like, 7-1 or 6-2, well, like that way staff can start exploring whatever that is. Does that make sense?
My question is, can we swing grants? Do we have money that we could do that with?
Absolutely not.
Where did the money going to come from?
But
we have a budget crunch, and
even in some of the TID districts, Mark?
No, so again, think of what a grant is. A grant is basically a gift to the recipient. And if we're saying that we would give grants to businesses, then the homeowner next door to you will say, what about me? And we will end up having to give grants to every property owner that supports the city of Middleton. Right?
I think it is more of an investment, but that's okay.
But that's what it becomes, is a property
Right.
tax rebate.
Right, but I just want to make sure that
that's what a
there's
TID
enough,
district is.
if we were to go loan program, that the interest rates are very, very favorable, if at all, and the terms are very, very favorable to help the businesses through this and until they can get back on their feet.
I think I think that we can I think we can be very accommodating from an interest rate environment. I don't believe that we would want to charge prime. We would want to talk over in finance what the sources of funds could be, and what we could do. I think Robert has a conceptually a good idea, but we would have to understand under some scenarios, even that would cost money, right? So even though if we made 0 interest loans for a year, would we then start saying, okay, well, you know what, in the second year, we have to start charging you interest? What would that look like? Because there is a time value of money for that first year that we have, right? I'm not saying that this is not doable. I just think we need to first say, let's forget about grants. Let's focus on loans, and then give finance the opportunity to go through whatever our best plans could be, right? It could be some combination of 0% loans or deferred interest or whatever. And to be able to talk about funding sources so that we understand that whatever support that we're going to offer through whatever program it is doesn't really negatively impact the city's finances.
Okay.
Why? Well, I think one of the things that we could do, we can just do the homework that Emily and others had talked about, and then come back. And I don't think there's necessarily a need for staff to do anything until we have had an opportunity to speak with more of the area businesses, because the last thing I want to do is put us in a position where we put together this loan program and we do take out money and nobody takes advantage of it, right? So
we wouldn't take, just to be clear,
sure,
we wouldn't take out money
if there wasn't interest. You're right.
Right. So we would probably do the initial funding ourselves and then roll it.
So I just want to make sure that even if it's just we don't take out money, but we spend time on it, that indeed there are a folks that are saying, yes, this would be beneficial to me in the business community. Or per Robert's earlier point, if they say, actually, no, but here's something that would be, not necessarily grants, but anything else, then we can take that feedback back and then have a better idea of what, you know, would be entailed and whether or not we have the appetite to go ahead and do it.
So Bill, I'll float this your way. Is research on this type of development or loan program, is that, I mean, we just talked about what the reimbursements might be. Is this another essentially reimbursable expense?
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
I'm not sure. I need to look into it. I know that there is a prohibition about doing a business support program under the Route to Recovery grants. If it's just limited to submitting for staff time, I suspect not, because for payroll related expenses, it's limited to public safety. Potentially, if we had outside costs that were not budgeted to a consultant or a bank to explore a program, that may be eligible, but I'd have to research it some more.
Thanks, Gabriel. So I have to say that Luke and Katie and Robert and Emily have a good point that we need to do some homework, go back and talk to the businesses, and see, come up with something, what would be most useful to them. So I would say whatever we do, we have to treat all businesses and all citizens equally. And not that if somebody is in TIF 3 or TIF 5, they get it, and who are not in TIF 3 or TIF 5, they don't. And as Mark has said repeatedly, that we have to treat all citizens alike as well. We can't just take citizens' money and give it to somebody. If we had a state money or federal money or Dane County money, which we could give away, it would have been a much easier thing to do, but we don't have that. It's the money coming from our own taxpayers. So we can help something like what CDA did, and also Robert had a great point, even helping that Scooters Coffee. And yeah, so I don't think we are at a point where we can make a decision one way or the else. I think let's go back and do our homework and bring it back to the finance and the council next time. Does that make sense?
This is Kathy. I have a question. We will go talk to the businesses and ask them what they need, but grants are off the table, correct?
Yeah, we don't have the money.
No grants. So we could ask them what kind of loan program would be helpful, or any other assistance that we could, you know, if it's a change of a permit or something that way. So that's our parameters. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on?
I have a question, Mayor.
I think there has to be some type of motion or something to do this deferral as well.
Yes, Mike. First you and then Mark. Mike?
I just want to make sure when we say we, I understand who we is. We are going to ask the businesses. Does that mean individually council members are going to ask the businesses, or are you saying we, meaning the staff, needs to go compile more information?
No, I'm saying the elders, Mike. There's the elders who said they wanted to go and talk.
Yes.
Yep, I'm in.
Yep, I will do that. I will take that on.
And this is Robert. I'll take it on too. I would also probably reach out to somebody like Kate Wicker and see if she has viewpoints, because I probably won't catch everyone, and neither will she, but if we're all reaching out, hopefully we'll get some information. But I think what we need to do right here, right now, is set up a conceptual framework. And what I've already heard is that I think the gist is, even though some people aren't sure about grants, we need to say grants is pretty much off the table. If you disagree with me, speak now or forever hold your peace. I think the two things we're looking at is low or 0% interest rate loans. We can't guarantee it, but that's what we're looking at. And any non-financial ways that the city can help. I think those are kind of the two things that we want to propose out in our emails to our constituents is that. Now, I'll leave it open to you guys to say, to tweak that or say something completely different.
Okay, so that's your motion, and Mark,
Well,
you agree with
I
that?
haven't phrased it as a motion yet. I guess I'm still fact finding at this point. Is this the will of the council? If people think it's the will, I will make that a motion.
I'd
Okay,
agree.
This is Kate Wicker with the Fitchburg Chamber, and we are in like whatever we can do. Sorry, I'm just going to pipe in because there is an emotion. Whatever we can do to help you reach out to those businesses, we're in. We can help you. We can make those phone calls. We can coordinate efforts. Whatever you guys need.
Thank you, Kate from
So-
Fitchburg.
Yeah, so you said Pittsburgh again, Kate.
Kate from Fitchburg, not the chamber.
I did
Chamber, Mike.
Yes, you did.
Just own it.
But
It's
she
cute.
was
Own
playing
it.
on the words. She said
It's
Kate
on the
from
recording, Kate.
Fitchburg.
Call it Mitchburg.
So I can't even
Kate,
tell you how mortified
Kate,
I am.
you have to work
even
on
begin
this.
to
I
tell
know
you.
Mike Frank is on the call as well. You guys are going to have some
I know.
conversation.
Yeah, he already gave me crap. He already called me out on it. So hey, let me start
Okay.
over. Hi.
Okay.
This is Kate with
this
the
is-
Middleton Chamber.
Thank you,
And-
Kate.
And this is also Andrea Van Nest from the DMBA. We have this as an agenda item on our monthly meeting tomorrow morning, just to start getting feedback from businesses. Not many were able to join in this evening to talk in the public comment section. So we can also help compile feedback from downtown Middleton businesses.
Thank you, Andrea. And you are also
Andrea, this
invited
is
to the
Kathy.
CDA meeting. Yes.
Andrea, this is Kathy. Could you forward me the Zoom meeting information for that? I'd like to sit in.
I
on it.
will. We're at
Thank you.
8:30 tomorrow morning. I'll forward you the invite.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And please make sure you take some time to come to the CDA meetings too. We are doing a lot to help you. So
Yes, you are, and we appreciate
Yeah.
that. I had a conflict with the last one, so I'm sorry I had to miss
Okay.
that one.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any other, does somebody want to second or?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I will officially make the motion to begin with.
Okay.
Those two things are our structural framework is low interest, very low interest loans.
Or no interest.
Or no interest. And that's still being worked out, obviously. And any non-financial ways that we can help our businesses. That would be my motion, is that's what we're going to be asking our business leaders.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion by Robert, second by Kathy. Any further input at this time?
I have a question. I have a question, Robert.
Yes, Mike.
One way in which that might work as a carrot is that it would be zero interest for perhaps up to 2 years, and if it's paid within that time or a set period of time, there would be no interest, and then after which there would be whatever interest rate that we wanted to charge.
So
Yeah,
can I make
you can work
can
out
I-
those details.
I make a
Those are
friendly
the
amendment?
details.
Could I make a friendly amendment, Robert,
Sure.
to your motion to instead of stating it that way, is to refer the finance issue, the financing terms, to the finance committee and let the finance figure out how to do this, whether it's some combination of deferred interest or deferred payments or whatever it is, so that we can match whatever you're trying to do. I think the sentiment we understand, so that we can try and figure out a loan program that matches not only the intent here, but also the funding sources.
I would absolutely accept that friendly amendment. So that is now part of my motion.
And I
Kathy,
agree
is that
with
okay
that.
with you?
I'm also on board with that. Yep.
Okay, the finance will work out the details. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so motion passes unanimously. We are on to ordinances, and the first reading, final action may be taken upon approval or motion to suspend rules under section 1.07. And the first item is the ordinance to increase deposit amounts of parking violations. It is going up from $10 to $30 for just about everything. And if it's delayed by 5 days, add 10 more, $40.
I'll make that motion.
Motion to approve. Need a second?
I will second. This is Katie.
Second by Katie. So you're not suspending the rules. This is the first
Oh,
reading.
yes, suspend the rules and for this
And
also.
pass it. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, you are suspending section 1.07 then. Okay.
Robert has his hand up.
Robert?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the way this was written, it says our city attorney Fleming elected to increase all similar deposit amounts. And I guess my question is, I think we want to be consistent. Is there any unintended consequences of raising everything from $10 to $30 or whatever it is? Or is for those who are closer to this problem or issue than I am, is it a good thing that we've increased all similar deposit amounts?
Larry or Matt?
They all have to do with parking issues.
Okay.
Right.
So in your packet, at the very end of your packet, it goes through the different, it's parking hour restrictions, time restricted parking, temporary no parking, restricted bus stops, time restricted. So it all has to do with parking issues.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
You see it there?
One point.
I saw it, I just didn't understand it.
Oh, okay.
One point I would like to make about that too. One of the things we see in the downtown is residents taking up spots on the street that could be used by people visiting businesses, or and also employees of the businesses taking up spots on the streets as well. So I think this could be positive for businesses if their own employees are parking in the lots downtown. And I'm referring to downtown, of course, because that's where most of the parking issues are. If they park in the free lot behind the library, or not in the 2-hour parking zone.
And that was part of the reason that we looked at this, is because there were, several people that were, it's pretty cheap parking if you pay $10 and park all day.
Yeah.
Yep. And we only have a half-time employee doing the parking enforcement.
Okay, further questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to approve the ordinance to increase the deposit amounts for parking violations, and this suspend the section 1.07. So if you vote, that will be final. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Now we have a last item, getting into the closed session. So this is convenient to close session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 19.851E, conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Specifically, issues related to Erdman Park development, the Middleton Municipal Airport, and the Town of Middleton proposal for competitive cooperative boundary agreement relative to the airport. So this is why we're going to close session. Need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Susan, second by Emily. All those in favor of the motion going into closed session say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So we will soon be in a closed session. So let's make sure that all the relevant people are in the closed session.
And I'm in the process of doing that, if you would just hold on.
Okay.
All right, and I will put our video gal into closed session or into the waiting room. And I think everybody else is city staff.
Okay.
You may want to pause the recording as well.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Abby. Unfortunately, my participant list is blocking the recording. I'm readmitting Christy into the meeting, and I'm trying to start the record function again, but it's blocked by the participant list.
No, it's recording.
I started the recording.
Okay, great. Thank you. By the way, just so you know, Christy sent an email about the problems with the with both finance and council, and it appears that our switching board is not working correctly. So they're going to take it and try to get it fixed, hopefully in time for the Thursday meeting. Finance meeting is streamed, but there's no audio. And for the council meeting, she does have part of the meeting captured, but it's not up on YouTube. So we're going to rely on my recording.
Are we in the open session yet, Mike?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we are in the open session. Okay, well, now we need a motion to adjourn.
This is Robert, so moved.
Motion by Robert, need a second.
I'll second it. Emily.
Second by Emily. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you and have a great evening. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bill, can you tell me if the recording's turned off?
And Mike, I've got the recording on. I started it when we came out of the closed session.
Oh,
want
you
me to
started
stop
it?
it?
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Okay, thank you.